Hey guys, what's going on? In this video, we'll be learning about numerical data, and numerical data consist of integers and floats. And we will just look at the difference between them right now. So in the code, I have written number equals to 7 and another number is called 7.6, is some very big decimal value. Now the difference between integers and floats is that integer variables contains all the numbers excluding decimals. Or in other words, floats contains all the decimals, right? So here number is equal to 7 is an integer variable and another number is equal to 7.664646 is a float variable. Now whenever we encounter numerical data, we tend to perform something called arithmetic operations. Now, let me quickly go ahead and paste the arithmetic operations right here. Yes, now these are the possible arithmetic operations that we can do with Python. Now the first four are the basic ones, which means addition between two integers or floats or integer float, vice versa, subtraction between them, multiplication. Or let me go ahead and quickly show you one. Print 2 plus 3, print the value, 2 plus 3, 0.34, and let's subtract. Now let's multiply, and so on and so forth. Now at this point you might have noticed that I have included division and floor division, and I will tell you the difference between them right now. Division is when we divide two integers or integer floats or combination of these. So let's quickly go ahead and let's divide 2 divided by 3 and let's print the value. Now you can see that it gave me a fully fleshed decimal value. Now the difference is that floor division, instead of giving you the entire decimals, it will directly give you the integer part from the decimals, right? So let me quickly go ahead. Oops, I forgot to do a floor division, which is nothing but 2 forward slashes. And if I try to print the value, you see it will give me 0. Now let's quickly go ahead and let's experiment again with something else. 7 divided by 3, which gave me some decimal value. And let's do some floor division, which should give me 2. Now that was the difference between division and floor division. Now modulus is the remainder of what happens when we divide A with B, right? So let's quickly understand it with what happens when we divide 5 with 2 and what's the remainder. If I do 2 goes twice into 5, giving you a remainder 1, so it should print 1. So answer 1. Now let's see what happens when we divide 4 with 2 and the remainder should be 0, so it should print a 0. Now that's all modulus function for modulus operation for you. Now the next is exponential operation, which is pretty much straightforward. For example, if I do 3 into, then if I do 2, so it should give me 3 squared. The answer should be 9. There you go. Now that is all about arithmetic operations and arithmetic operators. Now I need to tell you something important, which is known as precedence in Python. What exactly this means is that, suppose if I had to print something like this, 1 plus 2 into 3. So instead of Python adding 1 plus 2 first and then multiplying the result with 3, what Python does, Python first multiplies 2 into 3 and then adds 1. This, I think you might have studied in elementary classes, that precedence is something called board mass precedence. Yeah, Python follow exactly that. Now if I print the value, Python should first multiply 2 into 3 and then add 1, resulting in the answer 7. Yeah, it gave me the answer 7. Now if you want to actually add 1 and 2 together first, what you can do is you can break the precedence by putting a bracket. And what it does is, first Python adds 1 and 2, then adds the result with 3. So in this case, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 into 3 should be, the answer should be 9. That's all about precedence and arithmetic operations. Now let's quickly learn something known as incrementation. All right, now suppose let me create a number equals to 3, and suppose if I want to increment this number by 1 and assign this value back to number, what I can do, one way I can do is number equals to number plus 3 plus 1. So what it does is it adds the value 1 to number 3 and then assigns it back to number. And now if I print number, it should give me 4. Now we are using so many incrementations and things like that in Python, that Python has offered us something called shorthand operators. I'll tell you the shorthand operator right now. For example, I create a number equals to 4. If I want to add something to this number, I can do number plus equals to say 3. So what exactly it does is it does this number equals to number plus 3. So it adds the value of number with 3 and reassigns the value back to the number. If I try to print number, the answer should be 7. There you go. Now, the fun fact about shorthand operators is that you can use any operator alongside with it. So if I do into, you can see the answer will be 4 equal to, number equal to 4 into 3. The answer should be 12. There you go. And you can also do some floor division or integer division and things like that. And this is all about shorthand operators. Now I would like to tell you some useful function that we can use alongside Python. Now first function is the power function. Now for example, I have a number say 2 and I have another number say 3. What power function does is it takes the first number and considers it as base, and takes the second number and puts it as its power. So in other words, what it does is number to the power, number 2. Let's go ahead and print the value. So 2 to the power 3 should be 8. So it should be printed as 8. So in general, we can say it's the basically it's an exponential operator. But sometimes it's good to use power functions. It's because it's provided by the Python, and you should use it. Another function I want to show you is what I call absolute function. Now suppose if you have some number, say negative number, and if you try to print the absolute value, go ahead and delete this, and you can see the output is the absolute value of -2, which should print us 2. Now that was about absolute function. Now one more function I want to show you is something called floor function. Now to implement floor function, we need to import a library called math. For that, go ahead and type import math. Math is a library that comes predefined with Python. Now so now you can do is print math dot floor of any value, say 2.3434, something like that. I should print us an integer value, which is 2. Another function which we use a lot is ceil, which is exactly the opposite. So instead of printing us the nearest integer value, what it does, it takes the nearest integer value and adds 1 to it. So in this case, instead of giving us 2.334, something like that, it would take the integer value, that is 2, and adds 1 to it, resulting in 3, which gives us 3. Now the reason we add math is that because math is a library that we imported from Python, and there are so many functions that are present in math library. So if I simply put dot, you can see there are so many functions that comes along with Python math library, and we can use any of them. Now before I leave, I want to tell you one more thing, which is known as casting. Now before coming to casting, let me tell you that there is a way in which we can take input from users. For example, let's say if I want to enter 2 numbers, right? For example, let's declare a variable num1, and we will take an input from the user. So the user will enter the number, and then we will perform some arithmetic operations. So whenever you want to take an input from the user, in Python we have something called input function. You type input and then the string, which is also known as the prompt. So you say enter the integer value, or you can say enter a number. Now we will declare another variable, say num2, and we'll take another input, enter another number. Now let's quickly go ahead and print num1 plus num2. So I would like to show you something interesting here. If I run the code, it says enter the number. Now let's say if I enter number 2, and if I enter another number, let's say I will enter the number 5, the answer should be printed out 2 plus 5, which should give me 7. But surprisingly, it gives me 25. But how? The reason being that input always takes the value as a string, right? So whenever whatever we entered, it's not actually an integer, it's actually a string. So if you have followed the course along, in the previous time we actually did something like string plus string, which is another name for concatenation, right? So what it does is, instead of adding the real values, it concatenated, because it's a string, right? So if I just hover over it, number one is actually a string, right? So how can we convert this into an integer? Now here comes something known as casting. Now you can actually cast the input by passing an int variable, integer, okay, right? So for example, here this thing is a string, right? So we can just cast it to an integer by just wrapping it inside an integer function. And if we try to print, you would see the answer. Okay, let me input numbers first. 2, 5, the answer is 7, right? Because we actually wrapped them inside integer variable. The same way we can wrap it inside float variables, and we can run it. Now also you can cast integer to string, right? For example, print num1 plus num2. Let me quickly declare number 1, number 2. Num1 equals to 1, num2 equals to 2, and if you print the value, the answer is 3. Now we can quickly cast this number to string as well. So string of number 1 and string of number 2. Now what it does, it converts the number 1 to a string. So what it does is it actually converts this into this type and 2 into this type. Now when you add two strings, what it does is concatenating, and it gives you the answer 1, 2 together. Now if you run the code, it gives us the answer 1, 2. So before I leave, let me quickly tell you one more function which is very important, which is called type function. So you can actually check the type of value which is holding by the variable. So if I simply type print type of num2, it will give me integer because it's storing an integer value. Now if I simply type a string variable, for example, if I it was number 2, if I pass the string variable, and if you write the type of num2, it will give me, it's a class string. And if I pass something like 2.23 something like that, it will give me float variable. So that was all about it in today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you really liked today's video, you can really support us by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. You can also spread the word to others who really want to learn Python and learn from great resources like this, and hopefully this video was helpful for you. Alright guys, see you in the next video.